Right. It's already in the chat, by the way. So how's that for quick? You guys know how to copy and paste. Please do that because otherwise this is going to be gone. It's in the chat. So copy and paste it. Arinthia.
Are you done with the good?
No, tell me something good. Are you done with the good? That's funny. We're never done with the good.
But it was a fear that I got over. I had been hearing everyone talk about FSBO, and I'd never done that, even practice that conversation. So after being here yesterday with you, I did go home. I talked to Aaron, I talked to Jonathan about it, and then practiced it. So I got home probably 11:30 and finally got up enough courage at 3:30 to make the call. It took like I was frozen. I was literally frozen.
Yeah.
And I called, I even drove by her house like a stalker to go see. The sign was up, so in the neighborhood next to mine. So anyways, I called her and I was, hi, is this Daisy? She said, yes. Hey, it's Arinthia Dias from Keller Williams. Wanted to see if you're the property owner of. She said, yes. And I said, okay, is your house still listed for sale? And she said, oh, no, it's not. We have a contract. And I said, oh, congratulations. Are you looking to move somewhere else? And she said, oh, I've already moved. And I said, well, once again, Arinthia Dias from Keller Williams. If you are, anyone else that they're looking for a home, please feel free to contact me at Keller Williams and have a great day.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. We're all very proud of you, right? Absolutely. And let me give you just a couple of coaching points on that, because I can't just let that go and without talking about this. When somebody tells you their property is under contract, ask a couple of questions. When are you closing? Is the sale cash or is the buyer getting a pre-approval? Did they provide you with a copy of the pre-approval? Did you speak with the lender to make sure that they're actually pre-approved and not pre-qualified? And what are the repair limits? What's your inspection date? And if anything were to happen to this offer, would you want a backup offer? Statistically in today's market, at least 25% of sales are falling apart before they get to the closing table, which means you have a 25% chance that this contract won't close. So if I were able to bring you an offer that could be a backup in a backup position, would you want me to bring you that offer? I'm still going on the appointment. That's my point. Just because their property is under contract doesn't mean I'm not going to go on the appointment. I'm still going. And I'm going to continue to follow up with you. This is script right up until the day you close, just in case anything were to happen. I want to be there for you when you need me. In other words, stay in touch with her. Okay, guys, I'm going to change the conversation just because I want to make sure that we get today's content in there. And today's conversation is titled Living a Life of Permanent Purpose. And question, do you sometimes find yourself unconsciously judging your actions by level of importance? As in having a conversation with someone at the store when you're picking up some things you need at home and you're having a short 5-minute conversation with the person who's helping you is less important than the conversation you're having with a family member, right? Are some things less important than others? Do you ever find yourself judging the things you do as being more important or less important? And the answer for all of us has got to be yes, correct? Mm-hmm. Now, what if I were to tell you everything matters? Every move counts as much as any other. When you internalize this basic principle, you begin to live a life of permanent purpose. And are you living a life of permanent purpose? If you are on my Facebook page that you saw today's post with, can't see it because it's not there. You saw that picture on my Facebook page, right? And the question is, do I make a difference? When I move, when I act, when I do something, does the universe notice? Now, in 1963, Edward Lorenz presented a hypothesis to the New York Academy of Science. His theory stated simply was that a butterfly could flap its wings and set molecules of air in motion, which would move other molecules of air, in turn, moving more molecules of air, eventually capable of starting a hurricane on the other side of the planet. Now, when he did this, do you think the entire scientific community went, wow, that's awesome, we agree, a butterfly could start a hurricane? Absolutely not. He was basically laughed out of the arena. Lorenz and his ideas were literally laughed out of the conference. What he had proposed was ridiculous. It was preposterous, but it was fascinating. Therefore, because of the idea's charm and intrigue, the so-called butterfly effect became a staple of science fiction, remaining for decades a combination of myth and legend spread only by comic books and bad movies. That's funny. So, science has shown the butterfly effect to engage with the first movement of any form of matter, including people. Let me go back for a moment. So imagine the scientific community's shock and surprise when more than 30 years after the possibility was introduced, physics professors working from colleges and universities worldwide came to the conclusion that the butterfly effect was authentic, it was accurate, it was viable. That conversation you're having with the person at CVS could change the world. One conversation. Everything you do matters. It matters to everyone. It matters to all of us. Soon after, it was accorded the status of a law now known as the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. You know, leave it up to the scientist to make something so simple, so complicated, right? I mean, does anybody remember what I just said? No, of course you don't. But do you remember the butterfly effect? Of course you do. Simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. Simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. Quit making things so complicated. How about everything you do matters? It matters to everyone. It matters all of the time. It matters to all of us. Here's a cool story to prove the butterfly effect. If you've heard it before, cool, here it comes again. Did you know that there once existed a single man who more than a century ago made one move? One move. You know, it took less than 30 seconds to make this move. The move was a decision, and the decision was to charge. And that one decision changed the world. You guys believe that?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
He was a 34-year-old school teacher, but on the hot, humid day of July 2nd, 1863, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain was in the fight of his life. A former professor of rhetoric from Bowdoin College in Maine, he was now a colonel in the Union Army. Chamberlain stood at the far left edge of a group of 80,000 men strung out in lines across the fields and hills stretching all the way to a little town called Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Earlier that day, Colonel Vincent had placed Chamberlain and his men of the 20th Maine at the end of the line, saying, whatever you do, you can't let them come through here. Chamberlain couldn't withdraw, and he knew it. If the Confederate army overran them, the rebels would gain the high ground and the Union Army would be quickly defeated. In essence, 80,000 men would be caught from behind on a downhill charge with no protection. To win, the gray-clad Confederates would have to come through Chamberlain. How'd you like to be that guy? To know that all that stands between victory and defeat of a battle that could impact millions of lives in the future came through you in the decisions you made. Now, it's interesting because Chamberlain, long gone, do you think he knew at the moment how important that decision was? Say no, of course he didn't. Did you think he knew at the moment that he would change history? Of course he didn't. At 2:30 p.m., the first charge came from the 15th and 47th Alabama regiments. They attacked uphill, running as fast as they could and firing at Chamberlain's men, who were stationed behind a rock wall they had thrown up that very morning. The 20th Maine stopped the rebel charge and pushed them back down the slope, only to face a second and then a third charge. On the fourth assault, Chamberlain was actually shot. The bullet hit him square in his belt buckle. After realizing that he was safe, this little belt buckle that was 2 inches by 1 inch saved his life. Coincidence? No, definitely not. There's a hedge of protection that is around all of us. And until we have achieved the mission for which God has put us on this planet, nothing can harm us.
Agreed.
Once he realized that he was okay, he stood up, got back into the fight. And at that time in history, battles were fought with artillery and small arms ammunition. In other words, face to face, right? The struggles were close. They were face-to-face affairs. With their fourth charge, the Confederates almost made it to the wall, a thigh-high stack of flat rocks that ran almost 110 yards in length. As they waited for the next charge, Chamberlain felt sorry for his men. He later recalled their leader, he's speaking about himself, of course, their leader had no real knowledge of warfare or tactics. I was only a stubborn man, and that was my greatest advantage in this fight. I had deep within me the inability to do nothing. You could be smarter than me. You could have more resources than I do. But my greatest advantage is I won't quit. I have deep within me the inability to give up. My greatest asset is I won't quit. Chamberlain continued, I knew I may die, but I also knew that I would not die with a bullet in my back. I would not die in retreat. I am at least like the Apostle Paul, who wrote, this one thing I do, I press on towards the mark. The attack came again. On this, the fifth charge, the 15th and 47th Alabama broke open the wall and fighting raged on both sides. Without time to reload, the men were swinging their rifles at each other and brawling with fists and knives. But somehow the 20th Maine pushed the rebels downhill another time. After the fifth broken charge, Chamberlain's younger brother, Tom, appeared with Sergeant Tozer, an old hard-nosed soldier. Tozer had a thick wad of torn shirt stuck into a hole in his shoulder where he had been wounded. No help from the 83rd, the sergeant said. They're shot to ribbons, and all they can do is extend the line a bit. We're getting murdered on the flank. Can we extend? Chamberlain asked. There's nothing to extend, Tom answered. More than half our men are down. It was true. Chamberlain's command had started in Bangor, Maine 6 months earlier with 1,000 men. They started that morning with 300. Now they were down to 80. Hopeless. How are we for ammunition? The colonel asked. We've been shooting a lot, was his brother's answer. I know we've been shooting a lot, Chamberlain snapped. I can see I would do that. I want to know how we're holding out. How much ammunition do we have left? As Tom ran to check, a 12-year-old lookout had climbed a tree. He yelled, they're forming up again, Colonel. Chamberlain looked up to see the boy pointing down the hill. They're forming up right now, and they've been reinforced. There's a lot more of them this time. At that moment, a messenger stumbled into their midst. Out of breath, he said, Sir, Colonel Chamberlain, sir, Colonel Vincent is dead. Are you sure? Yes, sir, he gasped. He was shot right at the first of the fight. They were firmed up by Weeds' brigade, but now Weeds is dead. They moved Hazlett's battery up top. Hazlett's dead too. Chamberlain's brother came running back. Joshua, he said, we're out. 1-2 rounds per man at the most. Some of the men don't have anything at all. Chamberlain turned to a thin man standing on his right. It was First Sergeant Ellis Spear. Spear, he ordered, tell the boys to take the ammunition from the wounded and the dead. We did that last time, sir, Spear replied. Maybe we should think about pulling out, giving up, quitting. Please remember this story next time you think about quitting. Please. There are generations of people that have not been born yet, whose lives you will impact because you don't quit. Chamberlain responded grimly, we will not be pulling out, Sergeant. Carry out my orders. Colonel, Sergeant Tozer spoke up. We won't hold them again. You know we won't. Here they come. Chamberlain stepped to the top of the wall in full view, crossing his arms and staring down at the advancing enemy. The 15th and 47th Alabama, with their pale yellow-gray uniforms, now reinforced by a Texan regiment, moved up the hill as their high-pitched shriek, the rebel yell, coursed up towards Chamberlain and his men. Imagine being one of those 80. Knowing this is it. This is the end. Sergeant Spear was standing at the colonel's feet. Sergeant Tozier, Chamberlain's brother Tom, and Lieutenant Melcher, the flag bearer, were hurtled below. Joshua, his brother, said, do something. Give an order. Chamberlain stood there for a moment, deep in thought, quickly sorting the situation. We can't retreat, he thought. We can't stay here. When I am faced with the choice of doing nothing or doing something, I will always choose to act. He turned his back on the advancing rebels, looked down at his men. He turned his back on the advancing rebels, looked down on his men and said, fix bayonets. Now put yourself in that battle. You've got 2,000 men rushing uphill. You're one of 80 with no ammunition, facing certain death. And your leader says, fix bayonets. At first, no one moved. They just stared at him with their mouths open. I think that's what I would do. Fix your bayonets now, he commanded again. Execute a great right wheel of the entire regiment. Swing the left first. Do it now. Lieutenant Melcher spoke first, confused. Sir, he asked, what is a great right wheel? But the colonel had already jumped from the wall and was moving to the next group of men. Sergeant Tozier answered the question. He means to charge, son. A great right wheel is an all-out charge. Then, turning, the colonel pointed his sword directly downhill, facing overwhelming odds. Chamberlain slashed his blade through the air, and with the power born of courage and fear, the school teacher from Maine roared, charge, charge, charge to his men. The remaining 80 men lifted their voices to match that of their leader. Charge, charge, they cried, tumbling over the wall into a history about which most people in our country have never heard. For when the Confederate troops saw Chamberlain, the leader of the opposition, mount the wall, they immediately stopped, unsure as to what was happening. And when the colonel pointed his sword toward them and commanded his men to charge, they turned and ran. Many threw down their loaded weapons. The rebels were certain that these were not the same soldiers they had been facing. Surely these men had been reinforced, they thought. A beaten regiment would not charge. In less than 5 minutes, Chamberlain's sword was on the collarbone of the Confederate captain. You, sir, are my prisoner, he stated. The man turned around a fully loaded Navy Colt revolver and offered it to Chamberlain. Yes, sir, he answered, I am. Within 5 more minutes, that ragged group of 80 men under Chamberlain's command, without any ammunition, captured over 400 soldiers of the enemy. It's an amazing story, isn't it? And absolutely true. And here's the part that most people don't consider. Historians have determined that had Chamberlain not charged, if he had retreated, if he had been defeated, the Confederate army would have come through him and they would have won the Battle of Gettysburg. Furthermore, they've also proven that had the South won the Battle of Gettysburg, they would have gone on to win the Civil War within a matter of months. And the United States that we live in today would not be the United States of America. Now, most people would assume that we would be the Union and we would be the Confederate States of America. But historians have also proven that that's not true, that we would look more like Europe, a fragmented group of countries, somewhere between 9 and 13 different countries in North America versus the United States of America. Now, the story's not over yet. Had they lost that battle when Hitler marched across Europe to take over the world, there would not have been a United States of America to stand in the breach. When Japan went on to attack the Pacific Islands, there would not have been a country large enough, wealthy enough to fight 2 wars in 2 different continents. And I could go on and on and on. The world we live in today would not be the world we live in today, except for one person who made a decision to charge. One person made one decision that changed the world forever. Now, I'm going to go back to the question that I asked you earlier. Do you sometimes find yourself unconsciously judging your actions by level of importance? With a little perspective, you can live a life of permanent purpose. Everything matters. Every move counts as much as any other. One conversation that you have today can change somebody's life. Who can change somebody's life? Who can change somebody's life? Everything you do matters. It matters to me. It matters to everyone. All right, what are your thoughts? Larry, talk to us.
I think what you said today, particularly, and really the theme of Survive to Thrive is what you're all about. And that's legacy, knowing you could be doing 100 different things, whether it's being an educator, which is your past life. Well, you're still being an educator, but sharing what you know, what you've learned through real estate, through life, through living, and sharing it with us, your worshipers, or whatever you want to call it. You're showing us the way, and I think this is what you've always talked about is legacy. That's really the final step. Because you've made money, you have money, you could you could be sitting in an island someplace, but instead you're sitting in Coral Springs for an hour a day, sitting in a meeting, educating and passing on what you have to share to people like ourselves. And that's your legacy. That's your legacy.
Larry, I appreciate that. Very humbling to hear that. And yet, with no ego, I finally got to a point in my life where I really do believe that I can make a difference. I didn't always believe that. I didn't always look in the mirror and say, you matter. For a large part of my life, my self-talk was, you don't matter. And yet, everything we do matters. Everything we say matters. I'm leaving the office yesterday, and it's a long day, and there's stuff. And let's just say I was out of gas, right? My tank was empty. And an agent stopped me who wanted to have a conversation around lead generation. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody in the office hardly except for me and this one agent. And it would have been easy for me to say, you know what, it's been a long day. I'm tired. Can we talk about this tomorrow? And he would have said, sure, he would have. Oh, what if tomorrow didn't come? Or what if my mindset was, this is just one agent. I'm not talking to a room full of people. I don't have 50 people on Zoom. I'm not going to give this one agent everything I've got because this conversation is less important than those other conversations. And yet, I put everything down and we had a one-on-one coaching session that was high energy. Nick, true story? Because it matters. It matters to him. It matters to his family. It matters to children that haven't been born yet. It matters to their children. Think about that next time you're cashing out at Publix and you're talking to the person who's standing across the counter from you, ringing up all your food. And before you ignore them and just say, have a great day, bye. Think about the 20 seconds I'm standing here talking to you. I have an opportunity to impact your life for good. For those of you who have children, think about the seeds that you are planting into their lives. seeds for good, seeds for greatness. Or why can't you be more like Bobby? Why can't you be more like Sally? Seeds of doubt and fear. Everything you say matters. Everything you do matters. It matters to all of us. Millie.
So what I hear you saying is something we talked about yesterday in quantum leap, which is choices. And Scott asked the question, what do you think makes somebody successful compared to other people? And he was like, and the answer was to make better choices. So in hearing the story that you just told, we talked about the golden circle, Simon Sinek, and how we need to move from the inside out and not the outside in. So not the what, then the how, then the why, but the why, the how, and the what. And that just spoke to me because, you know, you can relate it to your business too. Why should, there's 76,000 of us, or however many there is. Why should I choose you? Because I'm selling a house? You need to attach yourself to, not attach yourself, but you need to attach feeling to that, to what and the how, and then go to the what.
Yeah, it starts with why, then it's what, and then it's how. Right. This is, 100%. Yeah, I love that. And I know I've heard Scott teach that, and I'm glad you got that.
Yeah.
You heard loud and clear what he wanted you to hear. I'm proud of you. Laura, did I see a hand? No. Okay. Thought I did. All right. Anybody else on Zoom before we sign off for the weekend? All right. I hope you guys got value today. What did this have to do with real estate?
John,
Everything. Yes, Raina, talk to us.
oh my God, I just want to say thank you because everything, every time that I'm being in this call, I'm learning something new, and you're such an inspiration, and you know, and everybody, and it's incredible because I always say that, you know, like, you know, everything you do is matter for other people, and it's really, I don't know, it's really nice to hear, you know, what I was thinking, you know, and that it's like, I don't know how to explain it. Like I start conform what I was thinking before, you know, be nice to other people because, you know, you don't know what is happening to that person. So I just want to thank you for everything.
Raina, I heard you loud and clear. Here's what's going on, right? You feel it here and you communicate it here, right? And sometimes the path from here to here is a little bit fuzzy, not direct. It's hard to find the words. You ever have anybody say it's hard to find the words? That's exactly what you were saying, but I get it. I promise you, I see your heart. Okay. I know what you're saying. And the word is passion, guys. And you know, it's when somebody is talking about passion, you'll hear things like the whole thing went from my head to my heart. And it became passion. When you are working with passion, fire, absolute fire.
So when you started out saying that, do we do things in order of priority, what we think is priority? You know, my first